I'm Jessica, 29. Standing in the foyer of the suburban mansion I've quietly paid for with 10 years of double shifts. It's Christmas Eve. The house smells like expensive pine, and I'm holding gifts I can barely afford. I walk to the dining table, ready to take my usual seat. But it's gone. In its place sits my sister Ashley's designer handbag. When I ask where I should sit, my mother doesn't even look up from her wine. Don't make a scene, she snaps. Just grab a stool from the kitchen. You're just a burden anyway. That single sentence didn't just break my heart, it woke me up. I didn't scream. I didn't beg for a seat. I turned around, walked out into the snow, and drove straight to the only person who wouldn't lie to me. But before I tell you what I found hidden in my grandmother's attic, a black notebook that proved they weren't just mean. They were criminals. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far the truth can travel. I walked out into the snow, and the heavy oak door clicked shut behind me. It was a solid, expensive sound. The kind of sound that says whatever is happening inside is protected, and whatever is outside does not matter. I stood on the front porch for a moment, the cold air biting at my cheeks, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and silverware clinking from the dining room. They hadn't even stopped eating. I walked down the long, salted driveway to my car, my boots crunching on the ice. The house looked magnificent from here. The windows glowed with that warm, amber light you see in holiday commercials. It looked like a home, but I knew better. It was a showroom, and I was just the silent partner who paid the electric bill. I got into my car and locked the door. The leather seat was freezing. I didn't start the engine immediately. I just sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house. My mind kept going back to that empty space at the table. It wasn't just about a chair. It was the culmination of a decade of erasure. That designer handbag sitting where I should have been wasn't an accident. It was a symbol. For years, I had been slowly replaced, inch by inch. In family photos, I was always the one holding the camera, never the one in the frame. At birthday parties, I was the one cutting the cake and serving the guests, never the one making a wish. I had become a utility to them. I was the plumbing inside the walls, essential, invisible, and only noticed if I stopped working. Ashley was the art on the walls, there to be admired. I was there to function. And tonight, they had made it clear that my function was no longer required. Even though my funding was... I pulled my phone out of my pocket. The screen seemed blindingly bright in the dark car. I opened my banking app. My thumb knew the movements by heart. I navigated to the scheduled transfers tab. There it was, right at the top. Pending. $2,000. Recipient mom. Frequency monthly. Next transfer date, December 25th. Midnight. For 10 years. That transfer had been my subscription fee for a family. I had convinced myself that if I paid enough, if I solved enough crises, if I was useful enough, eventually they would have to love me. I was buying a seat at a table that didn't exist. I looked at the numbers. $2,000. That was my rent. That was my groceries. That was my future. Drained away every 30 days to pay for a mansion I wasn't allowed to sleep in. My finger hovered over the cancel button. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a strange, cold clarity. It wasn't revenge. It was a business decision. The contract had been breached. I tapped the screen. A little box popped up, asking if I was sure I wanted to cancel this recurring payment. I whispered, yes, into the silence of the car, and tapped the button. The status changed from pending to canceled. Just like that. The flow of cash stopped. The pipeline was cut. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway, leaving the warm glow of the mansion in my rearview mirror. I didn't drive back to my apartment in the city. I couldn't stand the thought of being alone in a quiet room. Instead, I drove 40 minutes north, away from the gated communities and the manicured lawns, out to where the streetlights thinned out and the roads got rougher. I pulled up to a small, drafty wooden house that leaned slightly to the left. The paint was peeling, and the porch sagged. But there was a light on in the kitchen window. This was where my grandmother, Eleanor, lived. It was the only place in the world where I didn't have to pay to get in. I knocked on the worn wooden door, and a moment later, Grandma Eleanor opened it. She looked small in her flannel nightgown, her gray hair loose around her shoulders, but her eyes were sharp. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without a word. The house smelled of old wood, lavender, and damp earth. It was cold. She kept the heat low to save money, but it felt real in a way the mansion never did. She sat me down at her scarred kitchen table and put a kettle on the stove. They finally did it. Didn't they? She asked, her voice raspy but steady. I nodded, unable to speak. The silence in the kitchen wasn't empty. It was heavy, with things unsaid. I have something for you, she said, disappearing into her bedroom. I heard the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. She returned, carrying a dented, rusted iron box. She set it on the table with a thud. Your stepfather, Gary, thinks he's clever. He thinks because I'm old, I don't notice things. He left this here 3 years ago when they were storing things in my attic during the remodel. He forgot about it, but I didn't. She pushed the box toward me. The lid was unlocked. I lifted it, the hinges groaning in protest. Inside, there were no old photos or sentimental trinkets. It was filled with receipts, bank statements, and a thick, black notebook. I opened the notebook. It was a ledger. Gary's handwriting was neat, meticulous. The columns were labeled source and allocation. I started reading, and my breath hitched. January 1st. Source Jessica, $2,000. Allocation, Ashley's spring wardrobe. February 1st. Source Jessica, $2,000. Allocation down payment on Ashley's Fiat. March 1st. Source Jessica, $2,000. Allocation Pamela's medical spa treatment. Page after page. Year after year. 10 years of my life. Quantified and redistributed. I saw the entry for the emergency surgery Mom claimed she needed 4 years ago. $5,000 I had drained my savings for. In the ledger, it was listed as Ashley's Europe trip. I saw the roof repair money listed as country club membership fees. Every single dollar I had sent, $240,000 in total, was accounted for. And not 1 cent had gone to where they said it would. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the table. It wasn't just theft. It was the specific, targeted nature of it. They hadn't just stolen my money. They had stolen my labor, my time, my life force, and used it to build a shrine to my sister. Why? I whispered, my finger tracing an entry that read, Jessica's bonus is greater than Ashley's engagement party deposit. Why did they do this? Grandma Eleanor sat down opposite me and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was paper thin, but her grip was iron. Because you made it easy, child, and because they resent you for it. Resent me? I saved them. I paid their bills. That's exactly it, she said. Every time you sent a check, you reminded them that they needed you. You were the capable one, the strong one. And Ashley is their masterpiece. She's beautiful. She's charming. She's everything your mother wishes she was. But she's useless. Deep down, they know she can't survive on her own. So they cannibalized you to feed her? They took your strength to prop up her image. You weren't buying their love, Jessica. You were paying a tax for being the one who didn't need them. They hate you because you are the mirror that shows them their own greed. I looked back at the ledger. The giver's paradox. I had thought my generosity would make me valuable to them. Instead, it had made me a target. My competence was an insult to their incompetence. My hard work was an indictment of their laziness. They didn't love me for giving. They despised me for having enough to give. and they felt entitled to take it to level the playing field. I closed the notebook. The cover felt cold under my hand. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard knot of fury. This wasn't a family. It was a parasitic organism, and I had been the host. "Can I keep this?" I asked. "It's yours," Grandma said. "It always was." The first of the month arrived with the precision of a guillotine. Usually, by 9 o'clock in the morning, my phone would chirp with a generic text from my mother, a thumbs-up emoji. Her shorthand for payment received. Today, 9 o'clock came and went in silence. I was in the back office of the restaurant I managed, reviewing the inventory for the week. When the first call came in at 9:15, I let it go to voicemail. By 9:30, the texts started. They began with faint concern. "Jessica. Honey. Did you change banks? The transfer didn't go through?" Then, they shifted to panic. "I have the car payment due today. Please call me." By 10 o'clock, the mask had slipped completely. "You are being incredibly selfish. Do not ignore me. You are stealing from your family." Stealing. That was rich. I sat there, drinking my coffee, watching the notifications stack up on my screen like a digital monument to her entitlement. I didn't feel the urge to call her back. I didn't feel the old panic that usually set in whenever I displeased her. I just felt a cold detachment. Then, a notification popped up from Instagram. It was my sister, Ashley. I opened the app. There was a photo of her, posing in front of a brand new, pearl-white luxury SUV with a giant red bow on the hood. She was beaming, her perfect hair catching the sunlight. The caption read, "So incredibly blessed. New year. New ride. God is good." I stared at the image. God hadn't bought that car. I had. That down payment was my overtime. Those monthly installments were my skipped vacations. And yet, there she was, soaking up the likes and the comments, calling her an angel, a queen, a success story. This was the cruelty of praise in our family. Ashley was praised simply for existing in the spotlight I paid for. She was blessed for receiving, while I was ignored for giving. She got the glory of the result, while I bore the burden of the process. Her blessed life was nothing more than a filter placed over my hard labor. Seeing that photo didn't make me sad. It solidified my resolve. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my erasure. They wanted to consume my life, to fuel their fantasy. And they wanted me to stay backstage while they took the bow. I closed the app and picked up the iron box I had brought from Grandma Eleanor's. I left work early and drove straight to the office of a lawyer I had hired that morning. Her name was Grace, and she specialized in forensic accounting and elder financial abuse. I laid the ledger on her desk. My stepfather kept detailed records. I told her, "I want to know if this constitutes fraud." Grace spent 20 minutes flipping through the black notebook, cross-referencing the entries with the bank statements I had printed out. When she finally looked up, her expression was grim. "This isn't just fraud, Jessica. This is grand larceny. But there is something else." She pointed to a series of withdrawals listed in the back of the notebook under a column labeled Estate Maintenance. "These funds aren't coming from you. They are being drained from a separate account." "Who is Eleanor?" "My grandmother," I said, my blood running cold. "It looks like they have been siphoning money from her estate for years, likely using a power of attorney she doesn't know she signed. They are funding your sister's lifestyle with your money, and they are funding their own with your grandmother's." I felt a sharp, dangerous spike of adrenaline. They had come for me, and I had taken it. But coming for Grandma Eleanor, that was a mistake they would not survive. "Draft the letter," I said. "Not just for the money I sent. I want a full audit of my grandmother's estate. And I want to serve them with a notice of investigation for financial abuse." Grace nodded and started typing. "This is going to start a war," she warned. "Good," I said. "I'm ready to fight." Grace tapped her pen against a highlighted line on the spreadsheet. Jessica. Who is Sarah? The question hung in the air. Heavy and confusing. Sarah, I repeated. I don't know anyone named Sarah. Why? Because, for the last 7 years, there has been a recurring monthly transfer of $500 from your grandmother's estate account to a Sarah Miller in Columbus, Ohio. It's labeled consulting fees. But there are no invoices, no contracts, and no tax forms. My heart hammered against my ribs. Sarah. The name clawed at a locked door in the back of my mind. My older sister? I whispered, the memory surfacing like a drowned thing. Her name was Sarah, but she ran away when I was 12. Mom said she got hooked on drugs and disappeared. We haven't heard from her in 15 years. Mom told everyone she was dead to us. Well, Grace said, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. She's very much alive. And she's on the payroll. I drove to the address listed on the bank transfer the next morning. It wasn't a crack den or a halfway house. It was a charming, well-maintained bungalow with a flower garden in full bloom. A tricycle sat in the driveway. My hands shook as I knocked on the door. When it opened, I felt like I was looking into a mirror from 10 years in the future. The woman standing there had my eyes, my chin, but she looked peaceful. That was the difference. She looked like someone who could breathe. Jessica, she said softly. She didn't look surprised. I wondered if you'd ever come. We sat in her kitchen, drinking tea out of mugs that didn't match. She wasn't an addict. She was a librarian. She was married. She had 2 kids. The drug addict story was just another lie in the ledger. Why, I asked. Why did Mom lie? Why did you leave? Sarah set her mug down. I didn't run away. Jess, I was exiled. When I was 18, I got pregnant. Mom said it would ruin the family image. She gave me a choice: get an abortion and pretend it never happened, or get out and never come back. She said I was a cancer on her reputation. But the money, I said. Grace found payments. Hush money, Sarah corrected. Grandma Eleanor found out where I was 7 years ago. She wanted to help, but Mom intercepted the communication. Mom agreed to send me a small stipend from Grandma's accounts if I promised to stay dead. If I ever reached out to you or Ashley, the money would stop. And she threatened to sue for custody of my son, claiming I was unfit. I took the deal. I needed to protect my family. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a sad, ancient wisdom. I know you think I abandoned you, but you have to understand the price of toxic filial piety. We are raised to believe that honoring our parents means sacrificing our souls on their altar. We think that if we just cut off enough pieces of ourselves, we can finally fit into the mold they made. But it's a lie. I didn't leave because I didn't love you guys. I left because staying meant watching myself die by 1,000 cuts. Leaving was the only way to save the person I was supposed to be. I felt tears streaming down my face. I had spent my life trying to be the good daughter, paying for the sins of the bad one. But there was no bad daughter. There were only victims. I have something for you, Sarah said. She went to a drawer and pulled out a small digital recorder. Mom called me last week. She was in a panic because your payment didn't arrive. She thought I had told you. She admitted everything. Jess, the fraud with Grandma's estate, the lies about me, the way she used your money to buy Ashley's car. It's all on here. She placed the recorder in my hand. It felt warm. It felt like a weapon. She has a wedding to pay for on Saturday, Sarah said, a hard edge entering her voice. Ashley's big day. I think it's time the guests met the sister who paid for the champagne, and the sister who paid for the silence. Yes,